There is a letter in your apartment that you have rewritten 400 times. It is addressed to a woman who is alive, healthy, and living 40 minutes across the city. She has never read it. She never will. Not because you can't find her. You know exactly where she is. You know she takes the 6:40 train. You know she reads on her phone the entire way and never looks up. You could stand beside her tomorrow morning, close enough to touch her sleeve, and she would look at you the way you look at a stranger on a platform. A quick glance. Nothing behind it. 4 years ago you asked for everyone to forget you, and it worked. A film released this summer put a version of this on screen, and most people walked out of the theater talking about the fights. That is not what this is about. This is about what would actually happen to you, to your body, to your immune system, to the thing you call yourself. If you woke up tomorrow and every single person who had ever known you simply did not anymore. Not dead, not missing, not hiding, unwitnessed. And the answer is stranger and considerably worse than loneliness. Start with the part that seems survivable, because that is the trap. On paper, you are fine. You have an apartment, you have a body that works. Nobody is hunting you. You have not been imprisoned, injured, or cursed with pain. In every measurable physical sense, nothing has been taken from you. A doctor examining you would find a healthy adult. And that is exactly why this destroys people. Because the thing that has been removed from you does not appear on any scan. There is no wound to point at. You will spend years trying to explain a problem that has no visible edges to people who will forget the conversation the moment you walk away. So let's find the edges. Let's go back to why your brain was built to care in the first place. For most of the time our species has existed, you did not live in a city of 8 million. You lived in a group of somewhere between 20 and 150 people. That group was not your social life. It was your food supply, your defense system, your medical care, your child care, and your only source of information about the world. Everything you needed to stay alive came through other people who knew your name, which means expulsion from that group was not sadness. It was a death sentence with a delay on it. Alone, on the ancestral landscape, you could not hunt effectively. You could not sleep safely. You could not survive an injury. You could not raise a child. Anthropologists studying groups still living something close to that life have documented it plainly. Exile was one of the harshest punishments available, and it did not require an executioner. So evolution did something ruthless and efficient. It did not politely suggest you stay connected to your group. It built an alarm. And here is where it gets genuinely disturbing. In 2003, Naomi Eisenberger and her colleagues at UCLA published a study in the journal Science. They put volunteers into an fMRI scanner and had them play a simple ball-tossing video game with what they believed were 2 other players. The game was called Cyberball. It was frankly the most boring game imaginable. A cartoon ball passed back and forth on a screen. Then, partway through, the other 2 players stopped throwing the ball to the participant. That was it. That was the entire cruelty of the experiment. A digital ball stopped coming. The scanner lit up in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. Those are not regions that process disappointment or boredom. Those are the regions that register the distressing part of physical pain. The same circuitry that fires when you break a bone or burn your hand fired because a cartoon ball stopped arriving. The participants weren't losing anything. There was no money involved, no status, no future. They would never meet these people. Many of them were later told the other players were not people at all, that the whole thing was a computer script. It still hurt. Kipling Williams, who has spent decades running variations of this experiment, found that people report the sting even when they are told in advance that the exclusion is automated, meaningless, and fake. People felt it when excluded by players they were told they despised. Your brain does not check the credentials of the group rejecting you. The alarm does not have an off switch, and it does not have a volume control. Now hold that in your head and scale it. Not 1 game, not 3 minutes in a scanner, 4 years. Every person, every day. In 2010, researchers ran an experiment that sounds like a joke until you read the results. C. Nathan DeWall and his team gave people acetaminophen, ordinary over-the-counter painkiller, the kind you take for a headache. They gave it daily for 3 weeks and measured social pain. It went down. The painkiller dulled the hurt of rejection because at the level of your neurochemistry, your body was never given 2 separate systems. It got one and it reuses it. You are not being metaphorical when you say it hurts. You are being anatomically precise, but pain is the part you can feel. What happens underneath is quieter, and it is what actually kills people. In 2010, Julianne Holt-Lunstad and her colleagues pulled together 148 separate studies covering more than 308,000 people and asked a simple question: does social connection predict whether you are alive at follow-up? The finding was stark. People with strong social relationships had roughly a 50% higher likelihood of survival across the study periods. Later work put the mortality risk of chronic loneliness in the same territory as a serious smoking habit, and above obesity, not sadder, not less fulfilled, dead sooner. The mechanism is not mysterious, and this is the part almost nobody knows. Steve Cole and his colleagues have spent years reading the gene expression profile of white blood cells in chronically lonely people. There is a consistent signature. Genes involved in inflammation get turned up. Genes involved in antiviral defense get turned down. Think about what that means. Your immune system is not simply weakened, it is reconfigured. It shifts toward the profile of a body that expects to be physically wounded, and away from the profile of a body that expects to catch a virus from someone standing too close. Because on the ancestral landscape, alone meant no one to catch anything from, and no one to stop a predator. Your cells are preparing for the wrong century. And then there is your sleep, which is the detail that would ruin you slowly. John Cacioppo spent his career on this, and found something specific. Lonely people do not necessarily sleep fewer hours. What they do is wake up more. Micro-awakenings scattered through the night, most of which you never consciously register. The interpretation is uncomfortably logical. In a group, someone else is keeping watch. Alone, your brain refuses to fully hand over the shift, so it surfaces you, again and again, all night, checking. You would not know this was happening. You would simply be tired for 4 years and assume it was your fault. So that is your body. Now the harder question. What happens to the you inside it? More than a century ago, William James wrote something that has aged terrifyingly well. He said a person has as many social selves as there are individuals who recognize them, not a poetic flourish, an observation about how identity is stored. You are not a fixed object carried around inside your skull. Large portions of who you are exist in other people. Your best friend holds the version of you that is funny. Your mother holds the version that was 7 years old and afraid of the dark. A coworker holds the version that is competent. Someone who loved you holds a version of you that you have never seen and never will, because you cannot stand outside yourself and look. Now delete all of them at once. You have not lost your memories. That is the cruel precision of it. You remember everything. You remember the version of you that she loved. You are the only copy of that file left in existence, and there is no way to verify it. You cannot ask anyone whether you are remembering it correctly. You cannot ask whether you were actually kind, or whether you only tell yourself that now. Every claim you make about who you are is unfalsifiable, and a self that cannot be checked against anything begins to drift. We have data on what this does to a mind, because we have done it deliberately to people. Psychiatrist Stuart Grassian, examining prisoners held in prolonged solitary confinement, documented a recognizable cluster of symptoms: difficulty concentrating, hypersensitivity to small sounds and light, distortions of time, intrusive thoughts that would not stop, and, in a significant number of cases, perceptual disturbances, voices, presences, the felt sense that someone is in the room. Read that last one again because it is the most human thing in this entire video. Deprived of other people for long enough, the brain does not simply go quiet. It manufactures them. It would rather generate company out of nothing than accept the absence. That is how deep the requirement runs. And in your situation, the door is not locked. You can walk into any bar in the city tonight. You can stand in a crowd of thousands. You will be surrounded, spoken to, sold things, apologized to when someone bumps your shoulder. You will be in continuous contact with human beings, and not one of them will hold a single piece of you, which is the thing people get wrong about all of this. Loneliness is not about the number of humans in the room. Cacioppo's central finding was that it tracks the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. You can close that gap in an empty cabin with one letter from someone who knows you, and you can leave it wide open at a party where 400 people know your face. You would have the crowd. You would have none of the connection, permanently. Now, the part that would actually finish you. You still have the mask. In the mask, you are adored. People film you. Children draw you. Strangers shout thanks across the street. The city in aggregate loves you, and that love arrives daily, at volume, from every direction. And it does absolutely nothing. Because there is a difference between being needed and being known, and your nervous system can tell them apart even when you cannot. Being needed is transactional and endlessly renewable. There is always another emergency, another person who requires you at 3 in the morning, and each one gives you the brief, clean feeling of mattering. Being known is different. Being known means someone has the boring information, that you hate cilantro, that you go quiet before you get angry, that you were unbearable in the spring of your 19th year, and they stayed anyway. Nobody gets famous for the boring information. It is also the only thing that turns the alarm off. So you would take more emergencies, because the moment you stop moving, the silence arrives, and the alarm is still running underneath, at the exact volume evolution set it at 300,000 years ago. And so you would work, constantly. You would call it duty. You would call it responsibility. Other people would call it heroism, and they would be describing a man using the entire city as a painkiller. Picture the specific evening. It is October, and it is cold enough that your breath shows. You are sitting on a rooftop across the street from a lit apartment window, 4 floors up. Inside, 2 people you have known since you were 15 are cooking badly and laughing about it. You know he burns garlic every single time. You know she does the laugh where she covers her mouth. You know their coffee orders. You know what he was like at his father's funeral. They have never met you. If you knocked on that door right now, they would open it because they are kind people, and they would be kind to you specifically because that is who they are. They would be polite, they would be a little confused, and they would be waiting the entire time for the stranger to leave so they could get back to dinner. You do not knock. You sit there for another 40 minutes because it is warm through the glass, and then you go back to work. And here is what that scene is actually showing you. The spell did not take your friends away. Your friends are right there, 30 feet from you, alive and reachable and fond of exactly the kind of person you are. What was taken is smaller than that and worse than that. What was taken is the accumulated evidence, the shared past, the proof that you were there. You did not lose the people. You lost your standing to be missed by them. Now come back out of it, because this was never really about a man in a mask. You already run a version of this. Everyone does. There is a part of you right now that nobody in your life has the file on. Maybe it is something you did that you have never described out loud. Maybe it is what you are actually frightened of. Maybe it is just the specific texture of a Tuesday afternoon in your head, which you have never successfully transmitted to another human being and have quietly stopped trying to. That part of you is running the same alarm, smaller, quieter, same circuitry, same cortisol, same inflammatory genes ticking up by a fraction. And every time you choose the version of yourself that is easier to like over the version that is accurate, you erase a little of your own file, not with a spell, voluntarily, in exchange for being needed, or being useful, or being impressive, which are all real things that feel briefly like the thing you actually need, and are not it. The mechanism does not care that you did it to yourself. It runs anyway. So the useful question is not what you would do if the world forgot you. The world is not going to forget you. The useful question is the small one, and it is available tonight. Who currently holds the boring information about you? If you can name them, go be inconvenient to them this week. Not for the anniversary, not for the crisis, on a Tuesday, for no reason. And if you cannot name anyone, then you already know what this video was actually about. You have been carrying the only copy of yourself for a while now. Somebody else needs to be holding a piece of it.